Hi, I'm Dr. Chad Larson. Thanks for joining me in another episode of Keep It Real. So today we're on summertime tip number 4, which is all about cold therapy, cold showers and cold baths. So just as a summary, here are the 5 tips that we've been talking about. Tip number 1 was getting more vitamin D from the sun. And we talked about all the importance of getting it, particularly this time of year where the sun is most abundant in the summertime, and or at least the sun is kind of at the right angle during the summer for us to make the maximal amount of vitamin D per day. And we really need to store up our vitamin D through the summer, and that'll get us through winter and next spring. So it's really key to get your vitamin D from the sun. And you can watch that video for more details and caveats about your skin type and how much sun would be most appropriate for you. Summertime tip number 2 is get more antioxidants. Nature has provided us with some awesome berries this time of year that are very high in antioxidants, and this is the time of year where we're most active, we're getting more sun exposure, so it's really key to consume enough antioxidants that help to decrease the amount of inflammatory oxidation that can happen with more physical activity, more sun exposure. So definitely consume what nature has provided for us, and get those high quality, abundant antioxidants from things like berries. Summertime tip number 3 was all about do some kind of healthy change to your diet, whether it's removing something unhealthy or increasing something that is more healthful, and just take small steps. Make one little small change, but you can make those little small tiny changes, 1 or 2 or 5% change to your diet, but you do that day after day, and then you end up with a really healthy food program. Summertime tip number 4 is what we're talking about today, and that's all about cold baths and cold showers. And I'll talk about some of the cool studies and understanding that we have about cold therapy. And then summertime tip number 5, which we'll talk about next time, is giving back, some type of act of generosity and doing something nice for somebody else. And we'll talk about the obvious benefits of that, but we'll talk about some maybe lesser understood health benefits by some act of generosity. So let's talk about cold baths and showers. So this is a kind of a new concept, right? Taking a cold bath, wrong. It's super old, ancient human technique for vitality and wellness. And it goes all the way back. It's been dated back to ancient Greece. They used cold baths for health purposes. The ancient Shinto practitioners of Japan would stand under very cold waterfalls, and they talk about how that helps to cleanse the spirit. And they didn't know at the time, probably physiologically, all the amazing properties that they were getting, but they knew that they felt better when they did this. The ancient Spartans, you never found them taking a warm bath. It was always a cold bath, because they thought that taking warm baths made you weak. And Spartans were all about being warriors, so to really help to maintain their badassness, they would only take cold showers. And it turns out that they're pretty much right about that. And we'll talk about some of the details of the health properties of taking cold baths and showers. And then even more recently, time-wise, the Finns are well known for spending time in saunas and then going out to pretty much a freezing lake or stream and taking a dip in that. And even up till today, the Finns, that's still a popular practice to do in Finland. And then in the 1800s, there was a German farmer named Vince Priesnitz, and he was a German farmer, and he understood the importance of what he called hydrotherapy. He used it as a medical technique to help people with a very long list of ailments, and became so popular, not just in his local community, but it became so popular in Germany that people were coming from all over. And he created a sanitarium in Germany at his farm, where really his main technique was hydrotherapy, was doing different different water therapy, and most of it was using cold water. And this became so well known that dukes and duchesses from all over Europe started to come to a sanitarium. And so it really spread from Germany all across Europe, and it finally made its way even to the United States. And in the 1800s, I think it was the 1800s, maybe late 1800s, a physician named John Henry Kellogg started a sanitarium in Battle Creek, Michigan. It's called Battle Creek Sanitarium. And yes, this is the same Kellogg that also invented cornflakes along with his brother. And so they started the sanitarium, and it was wildly successful. They helped with all different types of ailments, from orthopedic injuries to things like erectile dysfunction and all kinds of things in between. And it was very, very popular at the time. And the physiological benefits still absolutely hold true to today. But we'll talk about some reasons why maybe cold therapy started to disappear as time went on. We'll get back to that in just a moment. But there's a few really interesting physiological changes that happens with cold therapy. There's been studies that show that by taking regular cold baths, it helps to improve your circulation. And so why would that be? Well, there's a few different reasons, but there's one really interesting one that I think I'll mention here. And that is when your blood vessels that help that your blood circulation, that your blood flows through your blood vessels to get up to your heart, and then your heart pumps, and your heart pumps blood through your arteries to all the different cells in your body. And these aren't just static tubes that your blood flows through. They're actually very, very active, very complex structures. And what we know is that your blood vessels have muscles, and just like your skeletal muscles, they very much work by supply and demand. The more demand that you put on your skeletal muscles, like your biceps, as you lift more weight, then your biceps will hypertrophy. They'll grow, they'll get stronger because you put that amount of demand on there. And so they supply you relative to the demand that you put on them. The same thing is true for your blood vessels. So this is where, maybe the Spartans and some of the ancient practitioners of cold therapy, maybe they didn't know the physiology behind this, but it really did make them stronger. And here's the reason why. Is because when you jump into a cold bath, or you switch your shower from hot to cold, it causes a pretty significant contraction of your blood vessels. And those blood vessel muscles contract, and they squeeze, and they shunt the blood to your internal organs, because your body goes, uh-oh, we just had a major stress, we better protect our internal organs. So all the blood flushes from your extremities, and it flushes toward your vital organ system. And so this contraction of those blood vessels, you do that over a period of time, and you help to strengthen your circulatory system. So that's powerful. That's powerful, especially with cardiovascular disease being the #1 killer in the US. What if we can use something so simple as cold therapy to help strengthen our cardiovascular system? Another one is the immune system. There's studies that show that taking cold baths will dramatically increase your white blood cells. Your white blood cells are what are available in your system to go after pathogens like viruses, bacteria, so forth. And so by taking cold baths, it helps to bolster and boost up your white blood cells. So helps your circulation, helps your immune system. It also helps to improve your metabolism. It helps to improve your metabolism in multiple ways, but one interesting way that I'll mention here is that it helps to boost up your brown fat. There's brown fat and white fat. When you look down at your belly, and if your belly has extra fat on there, that's all white fat. You don't see any brown fat in your body. It's all white fat. If you can see it through your skin, you can see you have, some fat or some chub accumulation here and there. That's all white fat. And that's kind of hard to burn, But they've shown that when you boost up your cold therapy, when you start taking cold baths and shower and expose yourself to cold, that actually causes more production of brown fat, which until pretty recently, in fact I did an episode on this a few months ago, until recently we didn't realize that adults really had that much brown fat. We have it a lot more as infants because our thermal regulation is not quite tuned up enough as infants to help maintain warmth that we need, and so we're born with quite a bit of brown fat, at least compared to what happens when we're adults, and then eventually the brown fat kind of fades away. But what we've learned is that it's just kind of dormant, and people who do this kind of cold practice, or maybe they have recreational things or occupational things that cause them to be more in cold climate, they tend to have more brown fat. And here's what's cool about the brown fat from a metabolic standpoint is brown fat is very, very metabolically active. In fact, it helps to really suck the white fat out and burn it for energy. And so that's a pretty amazing physiological adaptation. So we talked about improving circulation, improving the immune system, improving your metabolism. And one for the guys and gals, to some respect, is a boost of testosterone. The study that I'm referring to was only done on men, but we could probably extrapolate the information, and women probably get a little boost of testosterone in a positive way, not over testosterone, but if it's low, it'll help to boost it up. But in men, it was shown to help boost up testosterone pretty significantly by regularly engaging in cold therapy with cold baths and cold showers. And the fifth one that I'll mention is that it helps with the brain. There's so much cool information that's out there right now about the brain, and we're learning more and more about how to maintain a healthy brain with the understanding of dementia and Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and these neurodegenerative conditions. Researchers and clinicians are very interested in what we can do to help preserve and treat these kind of degenerative brain conditions. And at least one aspect that cold therapy really helps to support is certain neurotransmitters get boosted up when you engage in cold therapy. So nature's done something pretty cool. When you do something right for the body, it gives you a little treat. It gives you a little something that helps you to want to do it again. And one of the things that cold therapy does is helps to boost up your noradrenaline, or we call it more scientifically norepinephrine. And this norepinephrine is like the anti-depression neurotransmitter or hormone that's produced in the brain. It's also produced in other systems as well, but in the brain, it really helps to decrease depression. So can you imagine a world where doctors start to recommend cold therapy instead of leaning on a prescription pad and saying, okay, you just have to take Zoloft or Prozac or something like that for your depression? If we have a broader understanding of the way our physiology really works, and we know that by tapping into these natural therapies like cold therapy, we know that that can boost up your noradrenaline, your norepinephrine, and significantly decrease depression. This has been validated in studies, so that's pretty amazing. Another key neurotransmitter that gets a significant boost with cold therapy is dopamine. Dopamine is a really awesome and increasingly understood neurotransmitter that does lots of things in the body. The first thing that we used to think, probably decades ago, was that dopamine was just important for movement, because we knew that in Parkinson's disease, dopamine really drops, and that's a movement disorder. And so we figured that when dopamine drops, that it just affects a person's ability to move. And then as the understanding of dopamine increased, we really started to understand that, it seems like it's kind of a pleasure neurotransmitter, that as a person does things in their life that brings them pleasure, they get a little hit of dopamine. And so that really actually stood for a pretty long period of time, that it was basically just a neurotransmitter that got released when we did something that we really enjoyed doing. And people who had low dopamine oftentimes had a type of depression where they just weren't really engaged in life. They no longer found pleasure in the things that they used to find pleasure in. But now we have a new understanding, a more comprehensive understanding of dopamine. And I'm getting this idea from a researcher out of the University of Connecticut, UConn. His name is Jonathan Solomon, I think is maybe how you pronounce his last name. And he's doing some really interesting research for the past, I don't know, maybe 15 or 20 years. He has pretty much dedicated his research career to understanding dopamine. And he's understanding dopamine and adding to our knowledge of dopamine by understanding that it's not just pleasure that dopamine helps us with, it's more of a motivation neurotransmitter. And just to give you a little kind of understanding from a study standpoint, one thing that he did in a study was he used rats, and he had a corridor. And at one end of the corridor, he had a small pile of food. And at the other end of the corridor, he had a pile of food that was twice the size, but it had a little fence in front of it that the rat would have to climb over to enjoy that much larger pile of food. And what he found out is that almost invariably, the rats that decided to climb over the fence to get a higher pile of food had more dopamine in their system. In other words, they had a greater level of motivation to get a higher reward. And the rats that chose the easier, small pile of food that was much easier to get had lower amounts of dopamine. And so they've correlated very similar studies with humans and found the same thing, that when we can boost up our dopamine, we have more motivation to do things in our life that are healthier and more pleasurable. And so there's lots of ways that we can boost up dopamine, but we know that cold showers and cold baths is a really, really excellent way to boost up our dopamine pretty significantly. And also, if we go back to summertime tip number 1, vitamin D is really vital to help boost our production of vitamin D and help to support help boost our production of dopamine, and also helps to support the receptor sites where dopamine attaches in the brain. So vitamin D is also a key component in helping to boost up our dopamine. And so, those are some pretty awesome benefits. So we talked about circulation and immune support and metabolic support and testosterone and brain health. So why isn't this practiced by everybody? Besides, maybe the Finns and some other, cultures where this has been around for probably hundreds of years, it's kind of died out, particularly in the US. Although you can tell if you look around and you search around, there's kind of a movement, sort of the paleo primal, CrossFit, Spartan obstacle race kind of movement that's happening. And a lot of people in that community are talking about the benefits of cold showers, and how it helps to kind of boost their metabolism. Maybe they don't know all these details about what it's actually doing for their physiology, but they know that it's a good thing. And really, it was after the days where there were lots of sanitariums in the United States that offered hydrotherapy as a key medical technique, they were kind of pushed out by the medical establishment with the onset of pharmaceuticals. As pharmaceuticals became more dominant, people thought it was just as effective, but obviously way easier to just pop a pill than to muster up the courage to jump in a cold bath or a cold shower. And so these pills just became kind of, in my opinion, a very second-class substitute for what the cold therapy was doing. So I really encourage you to re-tap back into nature. It has all positive effects, doesn't have the negative side effects that all these pharmaceuticals do, from a whole range of things, from depression to orthopedic injuries and pain and inflammation. Cold therapy can be a really awesome solution for that. So I really encourage you to try it out and do it for a period of time until it becomes a habit. And then I think as you get that little sweet kind of treat of dopamine after a period of time of doing regular cold showers and cold therapy, then you'll be able to really enjoy the benefits. So I hope you learned something. I hope you you try this out. As the famous cold guru Dutchman named Wim Hof, he says that the cold is really your warm friend. So I hope you enjoy. Take a cold shower. Let me know how it goes, and we'll talk to you next time. Until then, keep it real.